it. Yes, sir. RMF, what up? Boom. I just wanna be a legend. They calling me a thank God. Ask God for repentance and trying to make up to heaven. Lucky that number 7. Yeah, people keep on pretending. Focus on the success. All the shit is resembling. Riding around with my team. Now it's for what we reppin'. RMF to the death. You with it or get to steppin'. This is stomping ground. That plagiarism simply not allowed. I'm from a city where it's iffy if you smoke aloud. And that cookie got the stiffy, better quiet down. I got all these loud thoughts in the...
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of Off the Bench. My name is Jorge, aka the Latino Nerd. We are going to discuss a lot of NBA news today. A lot of things have happened since we last spoke on these YouTube wavelengths. I'd like to thank again King Hezz and RMF Takeover for providing the intro song Legend. And as you can see from the intro, provided the music video as well. So follow the links in the description if you enjoy that kind of music and want to listen to more of King Hezz. But today we're going to talk about a huge number of trades that just happened. First off, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George set things off. They set the NBA ablaze. Not only with Kawhi Leonard deciding to join the Clippers, but behind the scenes, recruiting Paul George to demand a trade out of Oklahoma City and join the Clippers. And when you look at the construction of the Clippers, they re-signed Patrick Beverley, and in the trade to Oklahoma City, they get rid of Alexander, the young point guard, and Danilo Gallinari and his enormous contract. But along with that, they sent over 5 future first-round picks for Paul George's services. This is insane, ladies and gentlemen. This is a deal that is unheard of. We probably have never seen a trade like this before. And now Oklahoma City has 5 first-round picks from the LA Clippers, a young point guard to possibly build around in Alexander, and a veteran wing in Danilo Gallinari. But wait, it's not over yet, because the ripple effect of the Paul George trade to the Los Angeles Clippers means that Russell Westbrook was now left on his own in Oklahoma City. And in a Western Conference where every team has gotten better this offseason, if you're Russell Westbrook, you already don't want any part of the Thunder because they are not going to compete with the roster they have. And as reports came out, yes, exactly. That was exactly what Russell Westbrook was thinking. Russell Westbrook demanded a trade, and many pundits and experts pointed him going to the Miami Heat. Because why not? Miami already had Jimmy Butler. Why not get another ball-dominant guard? As if that makes any sense. Any basketball sense. But then reality hit, and we got something completely different. Completely different. Russell Westbrook was not on his way to South Beach, but instead, as reports have shown earlier today, is that Russell Westbrook is on his way to Houston. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. As many of you have already heard, Russell Westbrook is on his way to Houston. Houston has traded Chris Paul to Oklahoma City for 2 first-round picks. And Houston now has Russell Westbrook to pair with James Harden. This is insane, ladies and gentlemen. Practically, it's 3 first-round picks if you want to talk about it. 2 first-round picks that Houston owns, and the option of trading away, of swapping, that is, swapping first-round picks in the future. So now if you're Houston, you have reunited Russell Westbrook and James Harden in the prime of their careers. Not entering their prime, the prime of their careers. And Russell Westbrook is much better than Chris Paul. You know it, and I know it. Chris Paul, as great as he was in the last two postseasons, he just wasn't enough. And sure, you can say that Chris Paul was the missing piece when the Warriors and the Rockets went to get into 7 games, but this year they went to 6, and they had Chris Paul, they had James Harden, and the Rockets lost to the Warriors in 6 games, and then it's just ridiculous how they just screwed the pooch. It's just ridiculous. So of course, if you're Daryl Morey, you want to make moves, and there's been reports going on how both of them are just bickering at each other, and how just there's no love between the two. And realistically, Chris Paul only has this big of a contract because the previous owner of the Houston Rockets had promised Chris Paul a max contract if he were to agree to a trade to Houston. And that the previous owner held to that. And the new owner, of course, wasn't going to back down, just bought the team, wasn't going to start his first tenure with the Houston Rockets as a guy that doesn't follow through. But now, year 2 later, it's very evident that Chris Paul, although he is talented, he is up there in age, and now he's on his way to Oklahoma City. And now James Harden reunites with Russell Westbrook, and that's going to be interesting because it's going to be very fun to see who has the ball, who's going to be the ball-dominant guard, whether James Harden is going to let Russell Westbrook just run the offense and he's just going to be a spot-up shooter, or if Westbrook is going to play around James Harden. But I can only see positive things out of this, guys. There is zero way that Westbrook and Harden have any chemistry issues. Zero way that anything could go wrong. And the only thing that could go wrong, especially in a Western Conference where Durant is no longer involved, but Kawhi Leonard is in LA, it's practically up in the air. And I mentioned this on Nick Drago's podcast, Sports. I leave the link to the podcast I was featured on in the description. But, guys, Kawhi brought balance to the NBA. And by that, I mean, it's anyone's game right now. It's so hard to predict who is going to make the finals and win the NBA championship. You can make a case for every single team in the West. You can make several cases for some teams in the East, but it's really up for grabs. Paul George going to the Clippers just means that the Clippers are much closer to making their first finals appearance in franchise history. This is a franchise that has never made it past the second round. The Los Angeles Lakers obviously want to make it back to prominence back when Kobe Bryant was leading the way when he was healthy. And of course, everyone hopes that the role players that was brought in with LeBron James and Anthony Davis could help them succeed and get to the finals. But then there's teams like Utah, Portland, Denver, who's a young and up-and-coming team. And now you're going to add the Rockets to the... Not to say that the Rockets were not in the mix, but they were very close to dwindling out of the playoffs contention if the chemistry issues persisted. And now you have Russell Westbrook with James Harden. Oof. That's scary, guys. That's scary. But now to the more pressing issue of the Oklahoma City Thunder. This is a team that, quite frankly, screwed the pooch from the get-go. This is a team that was formerly known as the Seattle Supersonics that had moved to Oklahoma City, and they had drafted pretty well. They had drafted Kevin Durant. They drafted Russell Westbrook. They drafted James Harden. And player, mind you, that they traded for from Indiana, knowing full well he wanted to go to Los Angeles. They knew his intentions were to go to Los Angeles. Had him play with Russell Westbrook and Carmelo Anthony for a year. He resigns. The Thunder get rid of Melo. So now it's the Westbrook and Paul George show. Remember, they've lost in the first round, not just his first year, but last year as well. You re-sign him to a max deal, showing that, yes, small markets can get these players. And now, a year into his contract, he goes to Los Angeles. He goes to Sure, you get a bunch of picks for him. But the point wasn't to have him, to give up the assets to get him, just to trade him to Los Angeles Clippers and get some assets back. The point was to say, hey, we're a small market team. You never considered us. Help us. We will give you the keys to the city. They even had a Paul George day. And Paul George still said, I want to go join Kawhi in Los Angeles. Now, if you're Westbrook, you've been there since day one. You've been there since the move. And now you see them trading away the best player you've played with since Kevin Durant. You give them all your loyalty. You sign max deals showing that, hey, I love this team. I want people to come and play here in Oklahoma City with me. I will not leave. I will not leave to another team, join a Golden State. And now now a year after signing my good friend Paul George that I get along with and on the court and off the court, we're just gonna start from scratch? No. Westbrook may be 30, but you don't go that route if you have a team with Westbrook and Paul George on it. You knew the consequences. But we'll discuss more on this whole frenzy of trades after this commercial break from Diplomacy Clothing. Calling all creators. Introducing the Bazaar, the Westchester showcase with the sole purpose of bringing light to the hometown tower. All creatives, from artists, painters, rappers, singers, cooks, makeup artists, poets, musicians, etc., etc. If you have any type of creative talent and any of those listed sound like you, then we are looking for you to showcase. Follow the links to Diplomacy Clothing and slide in their DMs to either host or lock in a slot. This event will highlight all the talent that is in Westchester County and hopefully begin the trend of hosted events right here in Westchester and not just New York City and their brothers. This is the Bazaar. Tell a friend, save the date, August 25th. Follow the links below in the description for Diplomacy Clothing. Slide in their DMs. If you're a vendor, hop on in. This is a great opportunity for you. For any and all creatives, singers, cooks, musicians. I already listed them. You already know. General admission is $10. VIP is $15. You do not want to miss this if you are in the Westchester County area or in the New York City area. Take the Metro North up and see this. A lot of great talent. Follow the links in the description. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Another piece that we need to discuss is Chris Paul. Because Chris Paul he is the reason Russell Westbrook is in Houston right now, and he's in a Rockets uniform. Where does he go now? This is a man who stuck with New Orleans for years. Mind you, he did get drafted there, but he wasn't winning much. Didn't make it very far when he played with New Orleans. Then there was the whole botched trade to the Lakers, where he was meant to play with Kobe Bryant. And then, of course, there was his demand to go to New York and play with the Knicks and Carmelo Anthony. But the Knicks didn't want to amnesty Stoudemire, and that was just shut in his face. So he goes to Los Angeles and plays for the aforementioned Clippers. And the Clippers have their best years in franchise history, practically. They have Doc Rivers, Chris Paul is there, Blake Griffin is there, DeAndre Jordan's there. They win a lot of games, they become a top team, and then it dies down after alleged altercations with Doc Rivers' son, Austin Rivers, beef between Chris Paul and Doc Rivers as well, Blake Griffin not having a developed shot outside of dunking, DeAndre Jordan being a liability on offense and sometimes defense. And then there was the whole DeAndre Jordan spurning the Mavs max contract to return to the Clippers, only to see himself end up in a Mavericks jersey. And then Blake Griffin gets traded away to Detroit, and Chris Paul finds himself in Houston with a max deal. Of course, none of that happened in order, but you get the drift. Chris Paul now is in Oklahoma City after the trade, and quite frankly, I don't see him playing for that team a single minute. So if you're the Oklahoma City Thunder, you're thinking, all right, we traded Paul George, we got a boatload of first-round picks. We traded Chris Paul, got a boatload of first-round picks, and now you have to try to get rid of Chris Paul before the fall comes, before summer's end. And really, where's he going to go? I thought it was tough for Russell Westbrook to get traded at any point after free agency began. So many teams that originally would have been a third team option are now gone. Realistically, the Memphis Grizzlies are a team with cap space. The Mavericks have some cap space, but there's not really many teams out there with cap space to help the Oklahoma City Thunder make any form of a deal. And you really think about it, where can he go? Chris Paul obviously is getting linked to the Los Angeles Lakers because of the banana boat with LeBron James being in LA and knowing they need a point guard, because let's be real, if LeBron James is going to play the point guard position, who's going to defend the wings, and who's going to, because no one's going to really attack the paint with Anthony Davis there, but if it's just Kuzma at the wing, who's to say that the Lakers' defense isn't a viability? But tossing all that aside, the Lakers don't have many assets to trade to Oklahoma City Thunder. They traded all of their assets to New Orleans to get Anthony Davis. So what else does LA have to offer? They don't have much. They'd have to rescind possibly some offers that they already signed to bring in Chris Paul. And if Chris Paul gets a buyout, then he's probably only going to come in on a veteran's minimum. You would think, with the slew of cap space that the Lakers have after signing so many role players. So the point is that whether Chris Paul gets traded or bought out, there's very minimum destinations for him. Because of his age, because of the obnoxious, trade-wise, the obnoxiousness of his contract is going to be a tough pill for any team to swallow. Buyout-wise, sure, you can bring him in, but it's going to have to be at the veteran minimum. Would Chris Paul take the veteran minimum to play for LeBron? Realistically, that's the only option. Miami is watching the Chris Paul situation in OKC, but they're not making any moves. They already made moves by trading Hassan Whiteside to bring Jimmy Butler in. So what's there to do if you're Oklahoma City? It's very tough. It's very tough. My prediction is that Chris Paul will get bought out and he will sign whatever contract he has to sign. Because let's be real, this man is getting out of a max deal that he had no business in getting. Especially when you look at what happened, what the consequences were in Houston when, because of his max contract, they could only re-sign Clint Capella and lost all their 3-and-D wings in Trevor Ariza and Mbah Moute, and ultimately suffer the consequences because of it. So I think he's going to go to the Lakers one way or another. If you're Oklahoma City, maybe you take a low-ball deal because you have so many first-round picks. You just take whatever offer the Lakers will offer you and just say, hey, you know what? We already have 15 first-round picks. We don't need any more. Just take the contract, give us something that matches, and we'll take it from here. And you know, LeBron James is going to make sure that happens. He's going to make sure that happens. I guarantee it. If LeBron, this is lead GM, folks. Lead GM will ensure that Chris Paul is a Laker. No doubt about it. Do not get it twisted. He will be a Laker. My prediction will come true. Call it right now. Right now. Book it. Book it. He will be a Laker. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for today. Thank you so much for clicking on this video and clicking on this link to listen to me rant. A lot of great NBA news. I know I said in the last episode I was going to talk wrestling, but we got Fyter Fest on the 13th of July. I'll talk about the results. I'll talk about my thoughts on the 3 pay-per-views so far from AEW, All Elite Wrestling. Promise you that it's coming up. But please, we need to keep this podcast going. If you enjoy it, hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell notification so you get notified for when a video gets uploaded. We're going to try to do these podcasts every Saturday. I thank you so much for listening. Leave a comment of something you want me to discuss, something you want to hear about. I very much look forward to reading your comments. This has been Jorge signing out.